You're listening to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I have a real treat for you now. Jay Kuo is the chair-elect of the Human Rights Campaign. I think most of my listeners know that is the largest LGBTQ plus civil rights organization out there. He currently leads its public policy committee, and that means he helps elect candidates who actually, care about these issues. And that is not just the federal level, that is state and local too. In this era of new media, Jay has done something remarkable. He is the guy behind the team that took George Takei's, fabulous social media footprint and gave it to 25 million fans.
That's
followers.
about right. Yeah,
I mean,
depending on how you count it, right?
An amazing thing. And he has his own Substack called The Status Quo. That's KUO, Status Quo. And it is clear and fun and thoughtful. And I know, Paul, if you're listening, I'm talking to you. I got a lot of musicians who listen to this show. Jay wrote the score for a Broadway musical, for gosh sakes, Allegiance. And he was part of the production of others. So, and if that's not enough, because that's enough, but he's also a talented lawyer, a successful investor, and a dad.
Dad is the full-time job right now, but yes. New dad.
New dad.
Yes, I got a 1.5-year-old and a 1-year-old. It's
wow. Fabulous.
Yeah.
So much fun. Well, look, your pieces are terrific. They're clear, they're full of facts, they're fun to read. And I want to just get your general sense about where we are in this country. And then I want to ask you about a couple things in particular. But in the conversations I've been having, people say things are getting worse, or the administration's getting worse. Mm-hmm. But they also now are beginning to say, and the resistance is getting stronger.
Right. It's a paradox, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Right.
Somebody said to me yesterday, the disease is virulent, but the antibodies have grown very strong.
Right. And it's almost like when he's backed into a corner, he will lash out more. And you're succeeding, the worse, paradoxically, the worse things get, because he's getting a little desperate. And as he sees his control over his own party starting to slip, he's really lashing out in every direction, including at his own people. And that's a fascinating thing to watch.
I have okay, I'm going off script. I'm sorry. I have this mental image. He said this week, I think the next ticket should be, JD and Marco, or Marco and JD. He's like, he didn't say who should be on top because he wants them to fight for his attention. Right. And I have this image that they're the two who are going to be in that cage he's building on the White House. And he's going to stand on the balcony and say,
If you look from above it, it's sort of the White House compound looks like a meth addict moved in. Part of it's torn down. There's this gaudy thing in front. You don't know what's going on, but it's very emblematic of where we are. It's cheap show. They're having to bring people in, I had heard, to even fill those seats. And then, you wonder, they're building this monstrosity of a sort of metal ring in the middle of summer during, high thunderstorm season. It's cold outdoors. There's probably no backup. And you get this sense that we've seen this before. You remember his first military parade, and then what an embarrassing spectacle that was, or lack of spectacle, I guess it was, where people just sort of trudged through the motions. And we might see something playing out kind of similarly right now, with all the musical acts canceling on him, and him first saying he's going to be the draw, and then saying, no, we're not going to have anybody at all. I mean, there's no plan. There's no plan. And
so, like his war in Iran.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, last time we all saw the sort of the failure of that military parade birthday party he threw himself. This time we may not see it at all, because we're all busy planning our own parties, right?
That's right.
The counter programming is awesome around the country.
Right. And there's the official America 250, which is a bipartisan celebration. this was supposed to eclipse that, and now I think it won't. The freedom, what they call it, the freedom 250.
Right.
Everything is freedom with this guy. I think we're going to see some interesting kind of programming, and an opportunity for people to really step up. I saw, Heather Cox Richardson, another big Substacker, came out with a whole series of stories about America that and pieces from real patriots about where we are as a country. And so I think the counter program is going to be very interesting.
I do too. And for those of you who don't know this, this is Heather Cox Richardson calls this, I think, America 250. They're videos that are, I don't know, at most 90 seconds long, where people are
Right.
talking, about real contributions to the country, and they're from every part of our country, talking about what they've done. It's a beautiful thing, and if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Yes, it's gonna restore faith, and which is what we really need. I think right now, you asked
Mhm.
where we are. We are at a moment of both crisis and faith, because um, we risk tumbling into something darker still. And if that's, it's hard to believe, but we do risk that. There's a risk to the midterms. There's he's sort of telegraphing what he wants to say and do around that election with these attacks on our voting centers in Fulton County, in Milwaukee, in Arizona. So we're seeing that start to play out, but we're also seeing the pushback from judges, from civil rights organizations, from blue states. And so, it's this push pull that's happening. And the question is, who's going to have the juice
Yep.
come, come the time?
So, you wrote about, you and I both wrote about the Calais decision,
Mm.
right? An appalling decision, but this is the one where John Roberts killed the Voting Rights Act, but pretended he didn't, and then sent a case back to Alabama to decide whether they could use districts that were clearly racist. Um, and you, I think, if I read your writing correctly, you said, well, they might approve it if it comes back up, but it would be really a bridge too far for almost anybody. And then they did it.
And then they did it. And that's the part you want to speak the hope, and then you want to prepare for the thing that is inconceivable. Basically, gutting their own opinion by saying there's you could intentionally discriminate, which is the thing they pretended to preserve intentional discrimination on the record, as described by three Republican appointees, or there's two Trump appointees and one Bush elevation. That this panel came back to the same case and said, nope, still discrimination. 200 pages. Let's explain why.
Mhm.
And in a basically unsigned, unreasoned opinion coming out of the shadow docket, they said, you've misinterpreted us. Well, what is left if this is allowed? There's nothing left to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Just simply nothing left.
No, we misinterpreted their black robes. They're really white ones.
Yes.
I mean, what they've done to Black America is unconscionable. And it's not just in the Deep South in voting rights. It's Pete Hegseth trying to purge officers in the military, and books from libraries, and students from universities. It's absolutely hideous. And I want to ask about the LGBTQ community. Because they've
Mhm.
hinted that they're coming for marriage equality. What I mean, like, what's going on, and how is this administration? How's the threat perceived? And what's being done to counter it?
So I think you have to take every threat from this from the right very seriously. They do it for two reasons. They attack this community to show that they can. One, it does. It also gins up money from their base, because they run out of targets and they have to come back to old ones. And they say, we're really gonna get them this time. And so open your wallets for us, or we're going to come after marriage and restore what traditional marriage. This is. I think it's going to be a losing effort on their part, but they do have some judges, some justices on their side. With with Clarence Thomas
These
basically
two.
inviting a challenge and
Yep.
a challenge, and Alito basically being as MAGA as he can. I, the Human Rights Campaign is fighting at all levels. The true threats are coming from what the federal government can do right now to make lives really, really difficult for our trans brothers and sisters, medical care, gender affirming care for adolescents, and for any, even just plain medical care funded by the government, whether it's Medicaid or that, all of those things come into that. And I just saw today they're coming after Mount Sinai, trying to subpoena records from them, basically making it raising the risk level for healthcare providers to offer gender affirming care, which is life saving, for our community. So this is a life or death question for people in our community, and I'm proud to say that the Human Rights Campaign is in every legislature statewide where these are happening, is fighting every petition that's putting these ballot measures onto state ballots, is filing lawsuits, joining lawsuits. It is a full court press, but it is a full court defense, and this is where we are. Uh, we're part of a broader coalition of progressive groups that are fighting back against the Trump agenda, but we're also, heavily resourced ourselves. We have 74 million equality voters we intend to reach and turn out for the midterms. We reached 4 million members. These are dues paying members. That's a record for us. And so, folks are fired up. We're ready for the fight. In fact, we were born in this sort of the cauldron, right? We've been through the AIDS epidemic. We've been through the marriage fights. We've been through Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This is the next chapter, and we will win it because we don't back down from these fights. It's not that we relish them, but we know what to do and we know how to mobilize. And so if they think that they're going to just plow their way through and take away the rights of the most vulnerable folks in America without anybody lifting a finger, that's never going to happen. We're always going to have the backs of the trans community, and we've called upon our allies to step up, and we're happy to see that they are. This is not a fight we're going to have to fight alone.
I am so happy to hear that. I as a young man, I lived in the neighborhood of Chicago that at the time was called Boys Town during the AIDS crisis, and in a courtyard building, a kind of typical Chicago building, and a lot of my neighbors were dying.
Mhm.
And I'm an ally. I joined Open Hand. We would bring food to people and advocate. And I understood that the need for marriage equality when the family of a dead man wouldn't let his spouse really come to be part of the funeral. It was hideous. Um, the, but so the generation that went through AIDS did remarkable work in changing how America thinks. And I was worried that the generations that followed would find life was easy. I mean, it's kind of,
Mhm.
young people think it's cool to be gay. In the 1980s, it was hard to be gay,
Right.
and I'm glad to know that the fight is still there, that people aren't, that the next generation isn't shying away.
And part of this is a political fight, and part of it's a cultural fight. We went
Mhm.
across the country to raise 1 million voices for freedom and to tell our stories, and because we need to change not only politics but narratives. We need to change societal views. And the reason the right is lashing out so hard is because they have been losing this battle generation after generation. The number of folks who are more accepting, who know people who are LGBTQ, is rising, and they cannot stop it. Ultimately, what they can try to slow it down, but they will fail. And that feeling of failure, it's the same thing we're seeing reflected right now as the White House flounders, that they know that they are failing, and so the attacks become sharper, more desperate, more dangerous, and you wonder, how far will he take it, How far will the right take things? They're going to come after our marriage. Okay, try it. You'll have to pry our rings off our dead fingers. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
And so, in a way, it's the same thing is happening with voting rights. When you push too far and you take away people's voices, they will respond at the ballot box in numbers you could not possibly have imagined. They will respond in the streets and push harder, and you could undo your very own gerrymanders and turn them into what we call dummy manders, because you've
Sure.
underestimated
That's right.
how strong the resistance to your deprivation of voting rights is going to be.
Yeah,
You
for
don't
those of you who are
know.
listening, Jay's talking about this phenomenon where if you gerrymander and then lose in a landslide, the districts where you had a 15% majority that were turned to a 10% majority, so you could have more of them, could actually turn against you, and that is a great hope.
And we're seeing that start to play out possibly in Texas and Florida.
Yep.
Two places where they based their map drawing around the 2024 numbers, which included a huge swing to the right by the Latino population.
Yep.
And we've worked with Vote to Latino Vote to elevate Latino candidates, promising Latino candidates in these red to blue districts. And I'll tell you, we know that something is afoot. We know that the polling shows us this, the excitement shows us this, the numbers out of special elections show us that they cannot count reliably upon those 2024 numbers. In fact, they're way, way off now. And it reminds me of what happened. I'm going to date myself here, but back in the 1990s, when Prop 187 was up in California, and Governor Wilson was backing it hard. That was the proposition that would take away social services for undocumented persons. And the Latino community did not forgive the Republican Party in that state for generations. And it's one of the reasons California remains solidly blue now, and the Latino vote is solidly within the Democratic camp. They are doing the same thing now by having with their ICE policies and their brutal immigration and detention policies, and also their failed economic policies.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of what I love about the way you talked about that is, and the difference between this moment and previous. So every civil rights moment is unique, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this government took away Black political voices in the South in a way that feels like it's 1961, right? But the response to that is going to be different. It isn't going to be that the Black community is rallying all by itself for years and years and years to try and find anybody who would be an ally. There are allies all over the country who think it's repulsive and want to stand with them to fight back, because that fight we now know is our fight too.
That's right, and there's the difference. And we used to. George Takei used to tell me this story. One of the most heartbreaking things during the internment is that nobody stood up for the rights of the Japanese Americans at the time. There was a lonely sort of ACLU chapter of Northern California that fought for them, but everybody else was terrified. Everybody else had never encountered this kind of fascism before. This kind of attack upon basic civil rights, and so the reason he spent his life teaching that story is that so when he came to a moment like this, where the ICE is in the streets of Minneapolis, it's not just the Latino community or the Somali community who are fighting this. It's the white liberals, it's the whole working class, it's women, it's LGBTQs, it's everybody coming together, and that is an unstoppable force. That is democracy in action. And so in a way, we're all being put through this massive democracy clinic right now, where we have to sort of learn as we go. But look at the power of what that produces in a place like Minneapolis. If they replicate that across the country, they're toast.
Right. Well, they're back in Chicago. They're more subtle about it. So they found more subtle ways to do this, but they are here and aggressive. And still pointing their guns at people. It's a miracle somebody hasn't been killed in the last 2 weeks here.
I've been waiting for some sort of tragedy to come out of Delaney Center in New Jersey because of the confrontations that are happening.
Yep.
You've got hunger strikes happening. This is such a stain upon our history. I think we're going to be teaching about these detention centers for generations. We must insist upon it because we can't let this happen again. We simply can't. We have to look at how it was allowed to happen and build in protections against it.
The terrible thing is we thought we did.
Mhm.
We thought we did. We have protections, but we have a government that is ignoring our Constitution, and federal judges are telling them it all the time.
Right. And I think a big problem as an appellate lawyer, constitutional lawyer, looking at the shadow docket is I see a lot of the problems sort of originate from an unaccountable SCOTUS right wing majority that doesn't have to explain its actions and can lift stays put in good faith by federal judges, many of whom are Trump appointees,
Mhm.
and without giving any reason, and basically green lighting the White House to continue its path. And by the time it does come back to them, and they sort of twiddle their thumbs and decide whether they're going to rule this time on the merits, the damage is extensive and in some ways undoable.
Are you among those who feel like to protect the possibility of progress, we must have Supreme Court reform?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. And I'll go one step further. We can't have Supreme Court reform without eliminating the filibuster. And because we simply don't have the votes otherwise. They'll never allow Supreme Court reform if we have to get 10 Republicans or some odd number of Republicans to go along with it. We need the majority. This is a democracy. We should be ruled by majority. And this is a scary thing, I think, for people. But you think about it, it's one of these systemic weights upon getting anything actually done. We already have a system that skews, the smaller rural states with larger white populations in the, sort of the western part of the country. If they get two senators, it's already skewed. And so to
Yeah.
give the senators even more power through the power of the filibuster, that's not true representative democracy.
If when these guys are gone and Democrats regain power, I am determined, as you are, to make sure they learn how to use it.
Right. One of the problems I think in the last series of elections is that we didn't have quite enough will as a party, certainly in the Senate, to affect major reform. We had a mansion cinema problem, and now today we've got a Fetterman problem. And so people say, well, we need 4 seats. I'm like, yeah, we probably need 5
Yep.
because I don't trust the man. And sad as that is, there's always going to be somebody who takes advantage of the fact that we are, on a very in a very narrow band, and one person can really mess things up, and it gives them
Which is why we need a
yeah,
big win. We
we
need a
need a
big
big one, right?
we need a really big win. We have maybe 4 minutes left, and I have many topics I want to talk to you about. Could we take a couple of minutes? Are you able to tell us about your project in London?
Oh, sure. The musical project.
Yes. You know what? The
Absolutely.
world is
Yeah.
filled with many things, and politics is very important, but it isn't the only thing, and art is one of the ways we're going to get saved.
Yes, I'm very proud of this project. It's a musical, a family musical called Indigo, and it's the first time that we're centering a character who is on the spectrum, a teenage girl who is nonverbal. And so you ask, well, how could that possibly be a musical? Well, for the first time, the audience are going to get a peek into the mind and the soul of a nonverbal person because she is able to sing and communicate to the audience what her feelings are. And so, and for that, we've reached out to the autistic community, and we've always cast sort of neurodivergent folks in that role to give us that. So it's sort of a double plus. We get to tell a story that very few people have ever heard, and use actors who don't get any chances to tell it from their perspective. And so, I went into this not knowing much about the autistic community, and I've come out of it with just an amazing amount of respect and knowledge. And it's a beautiful small show, and we're taking it to off West End in London in 2027. And then to the West End after that, and we're hoping to jump it over to Broadway. That's kind of what we do. We develop things elsewhere, and then they make their way eventually over to New York.
That is the path. A
Yeah.
lot of shows have begun here in Chicago that are fabulous that
Yes.
find their way. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I wish you nothing but good luck in that venture. And the Human Rights Campaign is fortunate for your leadership. Um, it is a both dark time and a time that is bringing about an amazing amount of light. So I'm
Yes.
in awe of the people who are carrying the torch.
It's great talking to you.
Thank you, Jay. Really appreciate it.